If the SS discovered what this man was doing, he would be shot before sunset. No trial, no prison, no record. In 1943, one German officer had control over more than 1,000 Jewish men, women, and children. He didn't smuggle them out of Nazi territory. He didn't hide them in forests. He didn't lead an armed resistance. He kept them alive. By lying. Not in secret meetings, but on official Nazi documents. By forging importance. By inflating job titles. By turning paperwork into protection. His name was Major Karl Plagge. And this isn't a story about a hero who stood outside evil. It's the story of a man who realized that obedience was killing people, and that every signature he wrote could either save a life or get him executed. Karl Plagge was exactly the kind of man the Nazi system relied on. Not loud, not fanatical, not reckless. He was an engineer, a World War I veteran, methodical, order-driven, comfortable inside hierarchies. He believed systems existed for a reason. So when he joined the Nazi Party in the early 1930s, he didn't see it as a moral decision. He saw it as paperwork. In Germany at the time, not joining stalled careers and raised suspicion. Plagge chose stability. And for a while, the system rewarded him for it. In 1941, Germany invaded the Soviet Union. This wasn't conventional warfare. Behind the German army followed special units whose job wasn't to fight soldiers. Their job was to erase civilians, especially Jews. Entire towns vanished in days. Karl Plagge was sent east to Vilnius, in modern-day Lithuania. Before the war, Vilnius was known as the Jerusalem of the North. More than 60,000 Jews lived there. Within months of German occupation, most of them were gone, not deported. Shot. Outside the city was the Ponneri Forest. Soldiers avoided it. Civilians avoided it. Everyone knew what happened there. Mass executions. Unmarked graves. So many bodies that the earth itself shifted. Plagge didn't work in the forest. He ran a German army vehicle repair unit. It was supposed to be safe. Administrative. Non-lethal. That distinction mattered. At least at first. Plagge began noticing a pattern. A Jewish mechanic would show up for work one week. The next week his workstation was empty. No transfer notice. No reassignment. Just absence. Then entire families disappeared. Officers used the same word every time. Relocated. Plagge had already lived through one war. He knew what silence meant. Eventually someone said it out loud. The workers weren't being moved. They were being taken to Ponneri and shot. One morning, Plagge noticed something small, a pair of work boots still tucked beneath a bench. The man who wore them never returned. No explanation. No paperwork. Just boots. That's when the lie collapsed, because once you know what's happening, pretending you don't know becomes a choice. From that moment on, Plagge understood something terrifying. Every form he approved mattered. Every list he signed mattered. Names were no longer administrative details. They were death sentences or temporary stays of execution. Plagge began studying the system itself, and he discovered something crucial. The Nazis didn't kill Jews at random. They killed the ones labeled unnecessary. Workers lived longer, not free, not safe, but alive. Everyone else vanished, which meant something unthinkable. If he could make Jews necessary, he could keep them alive. And if the SS noticed what he was doing, he wouldn't be demoted. He would be eliminated. This was the moment of no return. Do your job. Follow the rules. Survive. Or quietly break them, knowing discovery meant death. Karl Plagge chose to break them. Not loudly. Not heroically, but with ink, stamps, and signatures. From that point on, every document he touched carried the same risk. Save a life. Or get himself killed. Because once Plagge started lying on official records, there was no safe way back. And in the next part, he would begin turning Nazi bureaucracy into a weapon against the very system that trusted him. Plog didn't start with a grand plan. He started with a name. A Jewish mechanic scheduled for relocation. Instead of approving the transfer, Plog rewrote the form. He listed the mechanic as essential to military vehicle operations. It was a small lie. One signature. One stamp. The man stayed. And no one noticed. That's when Plog understood something dangerous. The Nazi machine wasn't just brutal, it was bureaucratic. And bureaucracy has blind spots. The German army needed vehicles, trucks, fuel carriers, supply transports. On the Eastern Front, if vehicles failed, soldiers froze or starved. Plagge's unit repaired those vehicles, which meant his department had value. And value created leverage. So Plagge began expanding his labor force, not just skilled mechanics, tailors, teenagers, men who had never touched an engine. He gave them titles: metal technician, precision assistant, transport specialist. On paper, they were critical. In reality, they were alive. But paperwork creates trails, and trails invite questions. One afternoon, an SS officer visited Plagge's unit. He reviewed labor rosters. He noticed something unusual. Too many Jews. Too many family members attached to essential personnel. The officer asked calmly, "Why are so many of these workers indispensable?" The room went silent. Plagge answered without hesitation. He explained that vehicle breakdowns had increased, that repair turnaround time had improved under Jewish labor, that replacing them would cripple operations. He spoke like an engineer. Logical. Measured. The SS officer left. But that night, Plagge didn't sleep. Because he understood something now. He was being watched. Protecting workers was one thing. Protecting their families was another. Under Nazi racial policy, wives, children, elderly relatives, they were considered non-productive, which meant disposable. Plagge did something even more dangerous. He began attaching family members to work permits, wives listed as kitchen support, children as cleaning assistants, elderly parents as supply organizers. It was absurd. And it worked because Nazi bureaucracy was obsessed with order. If a form was stamped correctly, few people questioned it. Until they did. One week, several Jewish workers were seized during a roundup. Not by the army, by the SS. Plagge rushed to their detention site. This was reckless. Army officers did not interfere with SS operations. That boundary was understood. Plagge demanded their release. He argued military necessity, production timelines, operational harm. The SS commander stared at him. Long pause. Then said, "Be careful, Major. You're beginning to sound sympathetic." That wasn't a warning. That was a threat. From that moment forward, Plagge's position changed. He was no longer just another officer. He was an officer with irregularities. An officer who valued Jewish labor too highly. An officer who asked too many questions. And in Nazi Germany, attention was lethal. But Plagge didn't reverse course. He accelerated. By late 1943, Plagge's unit had grown to over 1,000 Jewish workers and family members. Think about that number. Over 1,000 people alive. Because one man kept altering paperwork. Each name required justification. Each justification required confidence. Each signature risked exposure. How many lies can one man tell? Before the system notices? Plagge was about to find out. By 1944, the war was turning. Soviet forces were advancing. German leadership began implementing a brutal policy. No witnesses. As the Red Army moved west, the Nazis began liquidating ghettos and labor camps. Not relocating. Eliminating. Vilnius was next. And this time, paperwork would not be enough. The SS informed Plagge that his Jewish labor force would be transferred. He knew what that meant. Ponery. Mass graves. No return. For years he had manipulated the system. Now the system was overriding him. This was the moment every quiet resistor eventually faces. when survival and conscience collide. Plagg had one last chance, but this time, the SS would be present. Watching. Listening. Waiting, because what Karl Plagg did next was not written on any document. And it had to be delivered. In a room full of SS officers. Without saying a single illegal word, by July 1944, Vilnius was collapsing. Soviet artillery could be heard in the distance. German officers were burning records, destroying files, preparing to retreat. And when the Nazis retreated, they didn't leave witnesses. They erased them. The SS informed Major Karl Plagg that his Jewish labor force would be evacuated. He had heard that word before. Evacuation meant execution. Ponneri Forest was already full. Now the last remaining Jews in Vilnius were scheduled to disappear, including the 1,000 people he had protected for years. This time, there would be no appeals, no paperwork loophole, no bureaucratic argument. The decision had been made above him. Plagg understood his position clearly. If he openly warned the workers, the SS would shoot him. If he stayed silent, every person under his authority would be murdered. There was no third option. Unless he created one. He requested permission to address his workers before transfer. The SS allowed it. They assumed it would be procedural, routine. They were wrong. The workers gathered. Men, women, children. Some sensed something was wrong. Others hoped this was just another delay. SS officers stood in the back of the room, armed, watching. Every word Plagg spoke would be heard, measured, judged. He began formally. Calm voice, controlled posture. He announced that the camp would be transferred under SS authority. No emotion, no hesitation. Then he said something unusual, something unnecessary, something no loyal Nazi officer needed to clarify. Plagg explained that the SS was an organization devoted to the protection of refugees. The SS officers approved. It sounded like propaganda. But the workers understood immediately. In Vilnius, everyone knew what the SS protected, not refugees. Mass graves. The room shifted. You could feel it. He continued, measured, deliberate. Then he added, therefore, you must be especially careful. That was it. No instructions. No escape plan. Just a sentence that meant two completely different things. Depending on who you were, at dawn the SS returned. Trucks arrived. Guards spread out. They expected compliance. They found confusion. Empty bunks. Missing workers. Shallow hiding places. The SS began searching. Anyone found was shot immediately. No questions, no paperwork, just gunfire. The sound echoed across the compound. Children were pulled from under floorboards, men dragged from walls. Some resisted. Most didn't. Hundreds were executed over the next 2 days. Plagg was present. He did not interfere. He could not. Because if he did, the killings would accelerate. And he understood something horrifying. If even a few survived, his warning had worked. But hundreds were never discovered. Hidden in cellars, inside false ceilings, in tunnels and storage pits. They stayed silent for days, some for weeks, without food, without light, listening to boots overhead, listening to gunshots, waiting for either death or the Red Army. Every one of them survived because they understood a sentence that was never spoken clearly. When Soviet forces entered Vilnius days later, they found ruins, they found bodies, and they found survivors emerging from hiding. Of the more than 60,000 Jews who had lived in Vilnius before the war, only a few thousand remained alive. Over 1,000 of them had passed through Karl Plagg's unit. Many were alive because he had lied. Many were alive because he had warned them. Not all. And that distinction mattered to him. Plagg had not stopped the massacre. He had delayed it, reduced it, bent it. But he had not defeated it. And now, the war was ending. Which meant something else was coming, judgment. Because when Germany surrendered, Karl Plagg did not celebrate. He prepared to stand trial. and he believed he deserved whatever happened next. When Germany surrendered in 1945, celebrations erupted across Europe and America. In Berlin, the Reich collapsed. In Vilnius, the mass graves remained. And Karl Plog did not flee. He didn't burn documents. He didn't change his name. He didn't disappear into the chaos like many others. He stayed. Because he knew what was coming. Denazification. Trials. Interrogations. And he wore the uniform of the enemy. To Allied authorities, nuance did not matter at first. If you were a Nazi Party member, you were suspect. If you were an officer, you were dangerous. Karl Plage was both. He was arrested and brought before a denazification tribunal, not a dramatic war crimes courtroom. Something colder, administrative. Forms, classifications, categories. Ironically, the same bureaucratic machinery he had once manipulated was now judging him. The tribunal had 5 classifications. Major offender. Offender. Lesser offender. Follower. Exonerated. Plog knew which category most Nazi officers fell into, and he believed he belonged somewhere among them. Because here's the part that makes this story harder. Karl Plog had joined the Nazi Party voluntarily. He had worn the uniform willingly. He had benefited from the system before he resisted it. He never denied that. During questioning, Plog did not present himself as a rescuer. He did not exaggerate his actions. He did not claim moral superiority. When asked why he had protected Jewish workers, he reportedly said something simple. He believed they were human beings. That was it. No grand speech. No self-justification. And when asked why he hadn't done more, he didn't argue. He agreed. Former Jewish prisoners from Vilnius began appearing before the tribunal. Men who had survived hiding spaces. Women who had lost families but kept their children alive. They testified under oath. They described forged job titles, false classifications, family work permits, the coded warning before liquidation. One by one, they told the court, "Without him, I would not be alive." Some said something heavier. "Because of him, my children exist." The room shifted. Because this was no longer a simple category of guilt. This was contradiction. A Nazi officer. Saving Jews. After reviewing testimony, the tribunal classified Karl Plage as a Mitläufer. A follower. Not a criminal, not exonerated completely, but not guilty of crimes. He was cleared of major wrongdoing. No prison. No execution. No public recognition. Just release. For many, that would have felt like victory. For Karl Plage, it did not. After the trial, when people congratulated him, he said something that stayed with survivors for decades. "I should have done more." That sentence matters, because it reveals something crucial. He did not see himself as brave. He did not see himself as exceptional. He saw the thousands who still died. And he measured himself against that. Plog returned to civilian life in Germany. He resumed engineering work. He did not tour schools. He did not publish memoirs. He did not seek recognition. He carried what he had seen and what he had failed to stop. He died in 1957. Largely forgotten. Decades later, survivors began telling the story again. In 2005, Yad Vashem, Israel's official Holocaust memorial, recognized Karl Plog as righteous among the nations. That title is reserved for non-Jews who risked their lives to save Jews during the Holocaust. Very few Germans have received it. Even fewer were members of the Nazi Party. Plog never saw the medal. He never heard the ceremony. The recognition came nearly 50 years after his death. Here's the uncomfortable part. Karl Plog was not perfect. He was not pure. He was not untouched by the system. He joined it. He worked within it. And then he bent it. This story isn't about a flawless hero. It's about a man who realized obedience was killing people and decided that survival was not enough. He didn't overthrow the regime. He didn't stop the Holocaust. He saved who he could, where he was, with what he had. And sometimes, that's what courage actually looks like. If you had power inside a system that was wrong, would you use it? If speaking openly meant death, would you speak indirectly? If doing nothing kept you safe, would you still act? Karl Plage answered those questions quietly, with ink, with signatures, with risk, and over 1,000 people lived because he did.